I just dedicated myself to all the pain of everyone else's pain. But the whole time I was doing that, I was just chasing other people's pain to make their pain go away and not focus on mine.
I like the idea of like a quote, like construction guy talking about emotion. Right. And, you know, I don't like, you know, the quote, you know, anything, right? Like people will say that about me. Oh, he's a real estate developer, or he's this or that. Right. And, you know, I think that's pretty dangerous when we start doing that to each other. But I think part of the reason why I've enjoyed, you know, talking to you over the years is because there is emotion there and there's some depth there. You know, I mean, that's, you know, why we're having this conversation, right? Because there's a lot of depth to everybody, but you know, you're looking at it, you're working on it, you're sharing it, you're in it, you know, and have been in it and whatever, right? Like some people are just, and you know, maybe part of the reason why the stereotype comes on the construction side is because, you know, maybe a lot of people traditionally in that field are not going to talk about emotion. They're not going to even want to look at it. They might just, you know, go have a beer. Yeah. And so, you know, I'd love to kind of have you unpack a little bit about the emotional part of your life. And, you know, maybe some of the work that you've done. I know therapy's been a big part of this for, you know, since childhood, but like talk a little bit about, you know, the journey of life, you know, kind of in your adult phase.
When I started the company, it was from this survival mentality. And I felt like a wild animal, just like trying to survive. And I just kept, I mean, I have, you know, good qualities that I was putting out there, but they were getting subverted and controlled by ego, especially as I built the company up and I started to get rewarded for it. So the similar path that you had a recent guest, Joe DeLoss, on, me and him have a mirrored moment as we worked together. We saw each other, like our egos rise, and then we like, wait, this isn't what it's worth. It's not worth it. This isn't worth what we're doing. But for so much of my 20s and early 30s, I was operating from this pain body, this damaged soul that was like, you know, people are wronging me and I need to prove them wrong and I need to do things my way. And if someone does something wrong, I'm going to put them in their place. And even if it's not like directly to them, I'm just going to move on from them. And I was just had this cycle, this 2-year cycle with, you know, personal relationships. You know, I was engaged and then disengaged. I had 2 business partners at Compton that both lasted 2 years, and they just couldn't deal with my emotion. And because I couldn't deal with it and I wasn't dealing with it. Meanwhile, I was looking to deal with it. I was getting coaches. I was going to therapy, and I was constantly looking outward to fix inward, and I was never looking inward to fix inward. And that was, you know, up until 2016 when I was working with Christopher Sless. I'd met him and we were working on the second floor of the Idea Foundry, and I was still in terrible pain. In fact, I just lost my second business partner over that project because I felt the weight of that project for the neighborhood in that moment and how important it was. And I lashed out at him and lost him. I lost him in that moment because I was like, no one's taking this seriously. I need your help. And I just didn't say it the right way. And I didn't give him, I did it from a place of pain, and it activated his pain. He was like, I'm out. I remember like going into 2016 going like, I don't want to be in this pain anymore. But then I was in Vistage. I was in this group, and I was going to these monthly meetings and just sharing pain. And meanwhile, building all these breweries, and alcohol was just controlling my life. And Artie Isaac, who was my mentor at that time, he did the hardest thing any guide has to do, which he kicked me out of the group and said, we can't fix what you need to work on. And the only way we're going to The only way you're going to work on it is if I tell you you're out. And it was so hard on me to be kicked out of that group because it meant so much to me, because I love leadership and I love growing as a person. And I didn't understand. I was like, if I'm broken, like help me fix it. Right. And he did, but in the right way, instead of like getting me closer. And then I like stopped drinking and I started going to therapy and I started becoming a little healthier, but it was all in the name of Artie. I just wanted dad to like me, you know? And I kept coming back to him. Can I come into the group now? No. Meanwhile, we're working on the second floor and I'm starting to realize there's something about my health that I need to work on. I had gotten this little tool. I wish I could remember the name. It was this little stone that I would strap to my belt and it would pay attention through an app, my regulation of my breath. And if I would start breathing hard, it would vibrate and it'd be like, hey, chill out, dude. It happened at a meeting and Christopher noticed and I kind of talked about it. And then that next week he was like, hey, I want to get to know you better. We went for coffee. And in that, right before the coffee meeting, I was like, I need a coach. I don't have a coach. And I'm talking to a guy I respect. I want to ask him for a coach. We were at Roosevelt having this conversation on Long Street. And I say at the end, like, do you have a coach? And he's like, it's funny you ask. I'm about to meet with Juan Alvarez. He's sitting right behind you. And the next week, me and Juan met. And this is in 2016. And I was like, hey, I've got a line item budget for coaching I'm not using. Can we work together? And that was the beginning of my mindfulness, like meditation journey. I mean, in 6 months, I saw the difference in everyone in my company and all the work that we were doing. In 2017, it was the most successful I've ever been in my entire life. Awards and, I met my a girlfriend that I ended up getting married to. And I went through all of these like high moments, like company's biggest it's ever been. I'm doing my own development project and, I'm making money. And meanwhile, my ego is just bigger and bigger and bigger. And every accolade I'm getting is feeling more empty and more empty and more empty. The work I was doing with Juan started to slip. And it wasn't until years later that I saw that I was still doing the work. And I had lost my breath from the relationship that I was in and what I was going through. And that the strain of the development project, as I'm sure you're well aware, can put so much, it can change you. And when we moved into our new office in 2018, I was married. And I was disconnected from the company and I wasn't being a good leader. And I had a foot out the door and the company went from, I think we did like 17 million in 2017 to like 8 million in 2018. And and you could feel it, you could feel it with, the tensions rising in the team and the client base and I also had to deal with too much success, like where clients were like, oh, you're too expensive. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what we do. And we're really competitive in that space. Exactly. And there was this like new education that I'd never had to do before. And meanwhile, I was losing, some of the clients and projects that, had helped me grow and I didn't know what to do about it. And I was also trying to do this marriage thing and I'd never done it before. And it was really, really hard for both of us. And we were both in pain and we were just perpetuating our pain together. And that led me into 2019 where I legitimately, we had implemented Traction, EOS in our company. And that was the saving grace to my company to this day. We started to implement the framework in 2017, struggled through it in 18. And then in 19, I was in a leadership meeting here as the owner of the company and I lost it. And I literally walked out of a meeting and I was just like yelled and I screamed and I walked out and I went home and I didn't feel safe at home. And I spent a whole week like couch surfing and like not being at home and not going to work because I was in so much pain. And I was just like, did not know what to do in life. I went back to my family life because she didn't desert me. And I was like, man, I'm used to just like pushing away so hard that they desert me. That's what I'm used to. Why didn't that happen? And, but there was still so much pain there in that relationship between us. It's funny because it's a gravity project. It was Taft's. I was working on Taft's in 2019. And there was a moment where we had to really like pump up the schedule. We had to get done by a certain date. There was a thing happening, and it involved me showing up. And I know how to do it. When you put me on a job, I'm going to get it done. And like, it's like magic. And I went out there and I just, for a month, I was on my feet every day working on this job, and it affected my health. And that soccer injury started to act up so bad that I would show up to the job site at 7 a.m. And I couldn't stand for the first like hour because of the concrete was so hard on my feet. And it was after that project that I was just like, I've got to have this foot surgery. I can't keep living this way because this pain's not worth it.
Yeah. You were in a lot of pain, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
At that time. And, yeah, I remember, sort of like hearing a little bit about this, but not really, and maybe you and I maybe talked about it a little bit, but like, you were, I know, and I never really knew if I knew what happened. I thought, did Blake sell? But I remember you stepping away. And, it's interesting because, you had all the tools, to some degree, right? Like, people often think, oh, okay, well, I'll hire Juan and we'll implement traction. And, that'll do it. Right. And Juan and Gina Wickman actually have both been on the podcast. So, for people listening, go back and listen to those episodes. I like love both of them and those systems. They're wonderful, super helpful. But, you also have to move through it all. Yeah. And it's not going to just like, learning to meditate isn't just going to all of a sudden just, solve all your problems. Cause
not at all.
You brought all this stuff there, right? Yeah. And there you are now. You might have better awareness around it, right? You might, be able to see things you couldn't see before, but it's still there. Yeah. You're in a marriage. You've got a deadline you still have a foot injury. I mean, there's a lot of pain that's now, there that had to be dealt with.
Yeah. There was a series of things that happened right after that project. I went to Japan. It was this Hail Mary for both of us to like try to figure something out together. Ultimately, that winter, I couldn't do it anymore, and I stepped away from the marriage. At the time, January 2020, wasn't really thinking what 2020 was going to be in that moment. And I just I just started running again, and I had a smile on my face, and I found this new energy being alone. And I saw like we had the best first quarter in the company's history. It was going to be the best year, even compared to that 2017 year. And then as the separation happened, and it was like, okay, now we got to get lawyers, and then we got to go through this conversation about, is it divorce? Is it this? Is it that? The pandemic started to happen. And then I started to have to isolate more. And at first I just dedicated myself to all the pain of everyone else's pain, all the restaurants and breweries and all these other people losing their chances to run their company and be operational, and like the ever changing rules of the city, the state, and feds. And like, I just was like, I'm going to aggregate this information because I do not have that pain, and I'm going to help. And I remember I had an email that I sent out every day for like a month about what was going on that day, like as apolitical as possible. Like if I was going to share a left-leaning thing, I'd share a right-leaning thing to give these different perspectives. And I was bringing in experts, and I was writing these emails, and like business owners were calling me. They're like, I was thinking about closing my company down, but your email made me think I could just keep going. Thank you. But the whole time I was doing that, I was just chasing other people's pain to make their pain go away and not focus on mine.
And it's an interesting thing because, I think that is part of who you are. Yeah. Right. I mean, I remember like the Can't Stop C-Bus, maybe, there was like movements happening, right? Yeah. Which is part of who you are. You're a part of wanting to make a change and help people, but you can lose yourself, or you can, do that and cover up for what you're not doing at home or within, which sounds like what, was going on with you.
That power, and I like it back to a childhood, it all came from my mom. She gave me something that was like this absolute magic. It came from the same place that I was dealing with in my 20s and 30s and up until the last couple of years, really. That holding on to something, holding on to a pain. We're so familiar with it because we don't let it go. And I used to hold on to the pain of like, well, the things that she didn't give me. And I held on to the pain of the decisions that she made from her own place in life and not ever looking at her perspective and her walk.
It's easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly with family, parents, I've seen just as I've gotten older and have my own kids, like, boy, does that reframe your parents pretty fast, and even, look, it doesn't mean that they're perfect. It doesn't mean that they did it all right. I've tried to tell my kids, like, I've never done this before, I'm trying, but, I'm probably going to fuck things up too, But, when you can reframe it and you can see the good and you can see the intention in the human being. My son actually just sent me this post from a comedian he likes who was taking a picture with his parents. And it said, you've grown up. The caption was, you've grown up when you realize that your parents are human beings too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just seeing the humanity in it. And then, the gratitude and the respect and appreciation for it is pretty cool.
And I didn't get that until just a few years ago. I'm so thankful for all of the pain I went through in 2020. I felt like I got knocked down and then thrown into the hole of despair. And I had to sit there, unable to crawl out and just wallow in this pain. And for once, because I couldn't leave the house, because I was in so much pain that I couldn't even handle a conversation as how you doing, to the point where, I was living in Franklinton in a rental of ours, and I couldn't even walk to Land Grant to get a 6-pack of beer because I was afraid to talk to people and tell them how much pain I was in. That I would get delivery service for beer, and to the point where my good friend Joe would even come up, like, I wouldn't leave my house. Joe would come over and knock on my door, and he's like, I have to take you on a walk. You have to leave your house. I was in so much pain, and the divorce was so difficult to finally say, hey, this is over, and we're filing for divorce. And then that same week, in 2020, my dad just abruptly died. And it was like this moment of like, oh shit, where's my safety net?
Yeah.
How I operated in the business world was that I just couldn't, even though I didn't want to fail, I knew I couldn't because of my dad. He would always catch me. And then boom, it's gone. And then I was like, oh God, I can't jump off the cliff. Who's going to catch me? And I went deeper and deeper and deeper and just pushed away. But now I look at that dark night of the soul, as Juan calls it. I actually stopped working with Juan. I got rid of, I had talked to you about like getting a therapist, and then I didn't act on it. And I just was alone. And I had people in my life that wouldn't allow me to be alone.
Yeah. Right.
And they would come to me.
Yeah. But you wanted to be alone.
Yeah.
You couldn't really do anything but be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was
that is the dark night of the soul, right? That is just where you were.
Yeah.
That's where you landed.
And it was, I didn't have any intention in early 2021 to step up and start walking out and like smell the roses. I just had people that were like, there's flowers out there. And they just kept, just a couple of friends would check in on me. And I had a friend that asked me to go visit him in Austin. And I said, dude, I'm never going to, like, I'll say yes, but I'll never show up unless you tell me when. And that was the beginning of the change for me. I went to a combo ceremony, which is like a frog poison thing that was quite the experience. I haven't done it since, but there was a meditation that I did in this couple's house, and I was the last person to go through this experience. So I did the meditation the longest. And afterwards, it was this door that had been shut on what I thought love was and how I wanted to see love opened up. And I came back to Columbus, and I just started to take steps outside. And Christopher Celeste asked me to like do some consulting work with him. And in that moment, there's this moment of acknowledging my worth and my value and stuff that I'd always thrown away to get construction projects. It's like, I'm just going to provide an inherent value on anything that you need in life. And then hopefully I do construction. And I started to value that and provide that service. And it just changed my perception of myself. And that couple were ayahuasca shamans, and they were traveling to Peru that February of 2021, and then coming back to America and going to Columbus and doing an ayahuasca ceremony. And I signed up for that. I did it. And in that, it was a 3-night experience. And in that second night, during ceremony, I had this moment with my mother where I saw how she was raised. I saw how her mother was raised, and this generational story in my head of this lineage of my family, and how much pain she was just trying to manage raising me. And I just was just like, why would I ever hold her decisions against her when she was just trying to heal her child and heal these other people? And why would me, as a biological kid who had everything I needed to be a functional human being, ever hold it against her that she has tried and successfully healed thousands of people? Why would I be so selfish? And I just like let go. And it was this 15-minute experience of this vision and this thought. And I remember coming out of that ceremony with other prolific moments of letting go of pain around the marriage and my dad's death. But I remember the next week, I was like, if this is real, I'm going to go talk to her about it. And I had dinner with her. I shared the story. We both fell into tears. And to this day, I've never once felt pain around her, ever. It's gone. And being able to do that around your mother, the first person you have contact with, she raised you. You can do that with anyone if you can do that with your mother. And it's changed this grip to an open hand, where I do not hold on to the pain of yesterday. I rewrite it for the gratitude of the now.